truthfully what happens is, as children grow up, we start to educate them progressively from the waist up. And then we focus on their heads and slightly to one side.
I think in the old days, you were better off. Because nowadays, they're all specialists. Everyone's becoming better and better. And less and less. And eventually someone's going to be superb. And nothing.
Our education system has mined our minds in the way that we strip mined the earth for a particular commodity. And for the future, it won't serve us. We have to rethink the fundamental principles on which we're educating our children.
We're not here to tell everybody that they're wrong and we're right. We're not saying that we have all the answers, but we'd like to present a different way of looking at it.
Hello listeners, welcome to episode 49 of China Jeducation. Would you believe we are one away from the 50th? Alex Eldridge Torin Tull is his name, is in the studio with us today. Alex?
That was an attempt of my name.
So Torin Alex Eldridge Tull.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
close enough.
good.
Close enough.
All the way from England, now living and working with us in South China, and we're completing a little mini series within a series, aren't we, Alex?
Yeah.
On how ignorant you are, in particular, how ignorant most of us are, including myself, and really looking at misconceptions that revolve around a spiralling strategy by the United Nations of 17 key sustainable goals for a better, brighter, happier future, blah, blah, blah. And over the last few podcasts in China Jeducation, we've been looking at various interesting, very key topics linked to these sustainable goals. If you remember, the first one was on zero hunger, or I think no poverty was one. We framed some questions, always 6 questions around each of them.
Yeah, from this gapminder.org.
Very good. Gapminder.org is the website. Yeah, plug there if you want to know where we're getting this most useful of useless information from. And the other one was Zero Hunger, which was another interesting one. Lots of misconceptions there. Good health and well-being, quality education, and gender equality. So if you haven't listened to those, we do recommend, don't we, Alex, that you go back and listen to some of them, because there are a lot of things that we learned.
Absolutely. I think certainly we've noticed patterns, to say the least, through the style of questions. But regardless, with every single question, it's fair to say that nearly every single question, I've never really thought about it in my day-to-day life. I don't think I've ever thought about some of these questions before. Just shows how sheltered my life has been in a weird way. Just, not necessarily thinking too much about the depth of some of these issues.
And I mean, my take-home point from it, and obviously we're going to finish the 6th one today, which is centred around clean water and sanitation, listeners. We take it for granted, don't we? A lot of these things, the clean water we get. Of course, in China, we can't drink the tap water, so we buy the barrels.
Yeah.
And who knows where they come from. I get a spring water, Zhenliu Shui, spring water which comes up from the mountain. But I've never been to the source, so I'm only there to believe that it's from there, and I'm still alive. But anyway, again, we take for granted back home in England during lockdown, you can drink the tap water. And some may say it's not great, but at least you can drink the stuff. It's got loads of fluoride in it, but that's another conspiracy. So let's move on. And what I've learned from what I would say is, I thought you were ignorant, but I really realised that you're even more ignorant than I thought you were ignorant about. And that's been a bit of an eye-opener. And indeed, for myself, I would always say I'm just as ignorant as I always think I am, which is quite ignorant. Right, so clean water and sanitation, Alex. Let's pit our wits against this UN goal. And listeners, please join us in trying to get the correct answer as well. We'll start with question number 1 then, shall we, Alex? How many people in the world have access to safe drinking water in their home or close by? How many people in the world have access to safe drinking water in their home or close by? Around 30%, around 50%, or around 70%? So 3 answers to chew your cud on.
Wow, okay. So the bit that I'm sort of thinking a bit about is nearby. That choice of word there, nearby. I mean, I've got to say 70%. But again, that might just be me taking things for granted because I know... I mean, maybe not, though.
Can I also just say, where did you get the word nearby from? Because it's not in the question.
You said have access to drinking water...
In their home or close by.
Sorry, close by.
But you're right, in a way. What does that mean, close by? Because to some people that walk miles a day, close by could be a mile.
Exactly that. Yeah, we could just, certainly here we can just either go around to the corner shop and grab a bottle of water.
That's close by.
That's it.
Oh, we're fudging again, aren't we?
We are, so that's why I'm thinking it's the top. It's got to be 70%.
Yeah, again, as we have noticed over these series of questions and topics, this organisation, Gapminder, which apparently has no links at all, affiliations with any political, religious or monetary organisation. It's self-donating from people like perhaps ourselves that go on it and are interested in information. They have tried in a way, or it's certainly what they are seeming to be, the patterns are suggesting, is they do show all these questions in rather a positive, rosy light, which is much better than most of our apparent misconceptions.
Yeah.
I'll go for 70.
But then again, I mean, in a weird way, I guess I'm slightly... I don't want to say I'm hopeful if... I'm wrong, but then again, it's tough to say do we know how many countries have got running water?
It's got to be 70%, hasn't it?
It must be.
Well, the answer, listeners, and Alex, it is, and 82% of people got that wrong. They really must be terribly ignorant.
I mean, do you really think that? I mean, is that to say, are we 50%? Are we saying the entire southern hemisphere or something doesn't have access to clean tap water or something, or clean running water?
Well.
Wow.
It says most people overestimate the number of people that lack access to safe water. Okay. It's probably because they don't want to trivialise the suffering of all the thirsty people in the world. Water is one of the most basic human needs, and today 70% of the world's population have access to safe drinking water in their home. Another 20% have access to a well or a tap within a 15-minute walk, there we go, from their home. Across the world, the trends are rising, and 90% already have access to safe drinking water.
So when they say close by, they're saying 15
minutes walk.
So, I mean, that's mile, basically. You can walk a mile in 15 minutes.
Depending on, of course, how good you walk, or even if you can. Many people are still killed by preventable infectious diseases and parasites from contaminated drinking water. It's terrible. In some places, the groundwater level is declining and new solutions are needed to solve this. But in most places, old solutions would work well. Local governments need to manage local water resources properly by building more pumps and connecting more pipes. So, as we said, 90% of people already have access to safe drinking water, and they're getting closer, this is saying, to reach 100% to let all people still have their thirst on a daily basis without getting ill. Well, yeah, again, should be 100%. Fundamental water, can't go without it, can we?
Yes.
We can go out with food, but water is absolutely essential.
Absolutely, yeah.
Did we do double absolutely there?
We did.
Absolutely. Right, let's move on to question number 2. Worldwide, how many people living in rural areas use surface water, such as lakes, rivers and streams, as their drinking water? Worldwide, how many people living in rural areas use surface water, such as lakes, rivers and streams, as their drinking water? My first thing is, here's the answer, it's less than 10%, around 30%, or more than 60%. In a lot of cases, I would probably say that you're probably drinking, I said probably twice there, and I said it again, that there's a probable chance they're drinking probably better probable water than what's probably in non-rural area taps anyway. Yeah,
because when we say rural areas, I mean, I guess it depends. I mean, rural flowing water up in, mountain tops where obviously it's spring water, it's more flowing, it's cleaner, but rural could be in a bog. Well, we don't want that, do we? Right, but that's technically still rural, isn't it? Yeah. So in a bog. Yes, exactly. Depends on the geography. I mean, I think what they're suggesting is that it's probably not good to be drinking surface water from lakes, rivers and streams. So what do you think? Less than 10% of people having to do that? Around 30 or more than 60? I mean, I would say around maybe 30, but... Okay, around 30%. I'm going to go less than 10% because, again, I think it wants to paint this rosy picture. I'm sticking with that one. Let's see.
And it is indeed, again, I win,
Less
you
than-
lose.
It's that rosy picture.
Yeah, it is less. It's the rosy picture. 71% of people, including yourself, Mr. Aldrich Toll, got that wrong.
I'm trying to wonder if this is sort of being painted as a rosy picture. In what way?
Well, it says here, you
Is
don't
it meant to
realise, because of your ignorance, that 96% of rural dwellers get water from some kind of well, pipe or spring, not from surface water.
So I guess the ignorance is there is just not realising how much improvement has been made to those water facilities.
Indeed, and speaking of wells, do you know where they
So-
were invented? Or at least where they found the oldest ones?
No.
Well, they were invented at least 6,000 years ago,
Yeah.
according to the oldest evidence from Zhongguo, China.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, apparently missing safe drinking water is still a big problem for some people who don't have a well, but the size of that problem easily gets overestimated. There is the misconception. Living in rural areas is different from urban areas, but not very different. Most rural areas are much more developed than people realise. Only 4% are missing a well for their drinking water. Most people we asked imagined that it's more than 30%, such as yourself. That's more than 7 times wrong. You're 7 times wrong.
So it's saying, I mean, less than 10%. I mean, that's saying what, around 4 or 5%.
Well,
7
4%
times.
sounds small, but that's
That
roughly
sounds-
100 million people we're talking about. So
I mean, that's crazy.
that's a lot. You know, poor them. We all deserve to have decent drinking water going down into our stomachs, right?
That's wow. Yeah, this is crazy. Is there anything else that it sort of says?
Well, talking of surface water, because I think we alluded earlier that it could actually be better than the tap, well, I did. It can sometimes be completely safe, especially where people live far apart. We're saying up in beautiful areas of the world where humans like ourselves haven't ruined it. But it can have invisible germs that cause terrible illnesses like diarrhea and cholera, which spread via, of course, contaminated water. And such diseases kill, those diseases, diarrhea, cholera, water-related diseases, kill how many a year?
Oh gosh, got to be quite a high number. It's got to be loads.
What would you drink?
Are we going to say millions? If I say in the millions, does that sort of, just because then I'll...
Well, apparently it said here 4%, 100 million weren't getting access to even well water, so...
So out of those 100 million, I'm going to say... I mean, it must be a majority of those. At least
Christ.
over 50, yeah.
50 million. That's genocide by water.
Pretty much. I mean, there's got to be if they don't have access
it says
to it.
here that such diseases kill 500,000 waterborne diseases each year. Half a million,
whoops.
which is still a hell of a
Oh,
lot.
I guess, yeah. I think I'm maybe overestimating there because the other side as well, okay, I'm thinking maybe catching it. I would
Yeah,
I
and
could
then
believe.
yeah.
But then it's whether there's the treatment around it.
It does say the data-wise, and this is a good thing about this site, listeners, gapminer.org. It does say, can I trust this data on every question that we ask? And it does say here, yes, but you must be aware of its limitations and, you know, the countries it's coming from and the national level data and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And also it says the WHO and UNICEF provides estimates in many cases. So, yeah. But again, we know there's an issue and it's something that, you know, again, on these podcasts, we're trying to expose these kind of things and think about things maybe not think about. So should we move on to that?
Yeah. I'm ready when you are.
I mean, that bottle of water you've got there is a decent bottle of water. We don't know where it's from, but it's in a shop. So you'd imagine it says French, c'est bon. It is good. Is it good?
Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah. Okay. Very watery. Next question then. Question number 3. Worldwide, Alex.
I'm ready. Yeah.
Worldwide, how many people have no toilet of any kind and instead have to use bushes, fields or streets? Worldwide, how many people have no toilet of any kind and instead have to use bushes, fields or streets? I mean, this is...
I mean, not even
imagine
like an outhouse.
not even an outhouse. Bushes, fields or streets. Roughly 10% of the world, 30% or 50%. I mean, if it was 10%, that's just...
That's enormous.
unbelievable, isn't it?
I mean, it's got to be 10%, but that's such a high number. 10% of the world's population.
What, 7 billion?
7.6 billion. So we are saying 760 million people of the world doing their business on the streets.
Or in fields or bushes. Well, the fields and bushes probably good for the fertiliser, maybe.
Yeah,
street.
That's the thing. Yeah,
And first, street.
It's just another form of fertilizer, like as any form of excrement.
Right. Well, let's.
Yeah, it's got to be the smallest. I kind of want it to
yeah.
be.
I'm going to go over you on that. It's got to be, hasn't it? Let's see. It is. Yes, it's roughly 10%.
But it doesn't make me feel good.
10% of people are having to do their Richard III's in bushes, fields, or on streets. 71% got that wrong, by the way. They
thought it was much higher.
Yeah, they thought a third or more of the world's population have no toilets. That would smell a lot. It seems to say. I guess it would. I mean, the fact that roughly 10% of the world's population have no toilet at home, it's still not good, is it? But it's much lower than what it says here most people think. And in year 2000, there was twice as many. So in 20 years, it's gone from 20% down to 10%. Using the bushes, fields or other open areas to go to the toilet creates many risks to both humans and the surrounding environment. Yes, you were saying.
I'm just curious on who's actually doing these sorts of surveys.
I was saying,
when you said
a toilet.
No, it's just the fact that 70% of the people, 70% of the people who have done this survey, who've done this questionnaire, think that over a third of the world are pooping and doing their excrements in the street. And I'm
yeah.
I mean, it's not like you. That's basically saying if I go outside, I'm going to see at least one person doing their business. Statistically speaking, obviously it depends on where in the world. But
well, that's the issue, isn't it? I think. Apparently, they got a lot of their data. The question is here: how can I explore hundreds of toilets from all over the world? And they say here on our tool, which is called Dollar Street, and the images below show what some people use if they do not have a toilet. Some of them actually look quite nice. Actually, there again, all on gapminer.org. We have no links to them at all. It's just a site that Mr. Toll came about browsing on when he was doing no work opposite me.
Cheers.
While we were meant to be teaching. So let's move on from that. Quite interesting, but still 10% don't have a toilet.
I mean, that's the thing, that's mad.
Yeah, pretty mad, isn't it? Well, move on.
Wow.
Question number 4, Mr. Toll. Of all the fresh water used in the world,
okay.
How much goes to agriculture? Of all the fresh water used in the world, how much goes to agriculture? Around 30%, 50%, or 70%?
Okay. Out of all fresh water in the world. So I'm thinking it's got to be I'm tempted to say smallest amount because it's saying fresh water. What is the priority list of how we divvy up the fresh water? Now, naturally, the top priority is people, or at least I'd hope that's the top priority. Second priority, I would assume, would maybe agriculture. I mean, would agriculture?
Livestock. Well, I think the problem is
livestock.
I think most people will be saying, "Oh, we're using all this water for animals and stuff to make this all the meat and all the things we're cutting down the Amazon rainforest." And by the way, listeners, there is a lot of evidence for this. I think we eat far too much meat, and all you meat eaters out there, I'm not suggesting to stop eating meat, but I think you should stop eating so much. I eat very little of it, and I still manage to survive and have a very happy life. And there are some beautiful plant-based alternatives out there now coming through, much more so than 10, 20 years ago. But I think that's what it's going to be. So I'm going to say, like you, 30%, because I think it's going to have that as a misconception. Should we go for it?
Yeah.
There we go then. Oh, we're wrong.
Oh.
You're not going to believe this.
Are you looking to further your career in education? Teach Now offers a convenient online teacher preparation and master's degree program completed anywhere in the world.
Reach now for Teach Now. Ain't no time for defeat now. Teachers get off your seats now. Future generations need you now.
Work with people all over the world in a collaborative, activity-based teaching environment.
To learn more, visit teach-now.edu.
Expertise that is really outside of the box.
The answer is around 70% of fresh water.
I mean, that basically suggests that
It's used for agriculture.
Again, this links to this idea that how much fresh water is required
For livestock.
for us, But then also how much is required for... There's two sides to it, yeah.
There's obviously far too... I mean, that does mean that there's absolute fact then to these, movies like Cowspiracy and things like this. That we are using copious amounts of our resources to feed these animals up to produce food for this protein-wanting nations, yeah?
It's just a luxury. That's all it is. Just wow.
That's quite something, and I would say that's probably quite near the truth then, if that's marrying up, because I do find a lot of these questions seem to be rather rosy and then see over-egging the positivity of the situation. But regarding this misconception, everyone knows that water's needed to grow food, but it's much more than people realise. Think of the large fields that must be properly irrigated to not run dry, particularly in areas where there isn't much rain, and the animals that need to drink. All of that dwarfs the amounts used in the municipal and industrial sectors.
Wow. I mean, that's good. I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, yeah. So as you've said already, seriously consider sort of vegetarian or vegan, or at least cutting down the amount of meat. And have you heard of the Meat-Free Mondays?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I think it's sort of like maybe how true this whole idea is, but the idea is if everyone in the population of the world went meat-free every Monday, climate change would stabilise due to greenhouse gases from methane, etc.
Are you suggesting we have an amazing amount of unified power if we were all to come together as one global unified race?
I mean, yeah,
I think so.
That's a no-brainer.
It's an elephant in the room, isn't it? But one thing I have to say on this, when we talk about agriculture, it doesn't split how much is going to plant-based agriculture and also to animals, but livestock. I would suggest, though, from the research I've done and the documentaries I've watched, that a lot more of it is needed for livestock than it is for plants, non-livestock.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about how much we require for our day-to-day living. We're essentially feeding another living being.
Yeah.
And they require a similar sort of amount to us.
And they're not really living, are they? The way they get
it's some of the treatment.
It's disgraceful, really, in all these spaces. Okay, let's move on to question 10. Some more question 10. Question 5. Here it is. How many countries out of 195 have at least one desalination plant removing salt from salt water? How many countries out of 195 have at least one desalination plant which removes salt from their salt water? So I guess we've got to be thinking countries on the coast, right? Because they're going to be more access to the sea, right?
Yeah, it must be.
Which would bring down 195 quite considerably, would it not? The answers, by the way, are either 30 countries, 100 countries, or 180. Well, it's not 180, is it? Unless we're sending salty water to all these countries.
Well, the only other side is, I mean, there could easily be, though, there could easily be just pipes that are having to think about countries quite central. Oh, sorry, that's my ankle. Countries that are quite central in continents. Massive pipes, massive industrial pipes that go out to the coast, and they could do it themselves. It's not impossible.
I mean, it makes sense. 70% of the world apparently is water from our oceans. If we can turn that into drinking water,
because that means it puts less pressure on coastal countries. I'd imagine that'd be something that has been considered.
Come on then, how many then countries out of 195? 30, 100 or 180?
I'd probably say 100, but then I can easily see 180 being this whole sunshine, rainbow, truth. But
I mean, gosh, if that's the case, then, well, going back to our earlier question, 10 million, was it 100 million people don't have access to well water?
That's the thing, that's the other side of it,
10% of people. I'm going to go with 30. I'm just going to be really negative here. Why not?
Okay.
Here we go then, yin and yang. You say 100, I say 30. Let's go with 100. It's wrong. There you go, it's rosy, it's 180. So 180 countries out of 195 have technology for removing salt from seawater.
But then that contradicts that whole idea of how countries are having to, the sheer population of people having to who are relying on rivers and, non-flowing water like wells.
Or the
as we had
distribution.
earlier, the distribution as well.
And maybe the distribution in terms of, you have to pay this amount, otherwise you won't get it. May be an issue as well. Money does seem to talk in capitalistic worlds that we live in. But that is quite something. 180 out of 195 listeners, 84% by the way, including us, Alex, got that wrong. Globally, apparently 300 million people get their drinking water from desalination plants.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of the fresh water from them is used for agricultural industry. If you live in a country with enough drinking water provided naturally, you have most likely never come across desalinated water. In dry areas, it is of high importance to find alternative sources of water. And as desalination becomes increasingly popular globally, we need to consider the consequences of these practices and how to properly handle the waste products. Well, that's interesting because what is the waste product of desalination? I would have said it was salt, but maybe there is other things to it.
Well, they'll be filtering it because obviously, the salt. Think about what's actually in the sea. We are dumping a lot of waste into the sea, aren't we? So it's more than just.
Well, yes. Some cities have run out of fresh water, and desalination could become a solution. But unfortunately, desalination in massive volumes does also have problems. There are two kinds of desalination technology. One, thermal, which heats up water and then captures the condensation. And then two, we've heard of this, reverse osmosis, which forces seawater through the pores of a membrane. And the first method, with the thermal, requires lots of energy, and the latter produces byproducts with environmental problems such as the salty waste, the brine left over from the process, which can be harmful if released back into our oceans, which it probably is, isn't it? That's a reverse osmosis process. Pulling in seawater also damages the coastal seabed. Oh, that's interesting. And risks pulling in fish and other living plants and animal species. Everything has an effect, doesn't it?
So we're basically saying this whole rosy picture of all these countries have access to desalination plants. It's actually doing a lot more damage than we might realise.
Yeah, you can just see one clever group of scientists or something said, we have the solution to our water issues, our healthy drinking water issues. And they signed papers and they signatured them and ratified them. And by all means, I'm sure now we have 180 countries jamming salt water into certain plants. Probably a huge cost, may I add, and also hurting the environment as well, just as much. It's the same. What's the benefits really versus the non-benefits of doing such a new innovative mechanism, way of change? And
I wonder, some countries have probably worked out a way of minimising the damage, minimising the harmful output. Is that shared with the rest of the world? Is that given access to sort of lower income countries, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, going back earlier to what we were talking about food, and these documentaries I've watched, and there's so much evidence now, irrefutable evidence to suggest that if we all stop having showers every day, if we all carpool, if we all do these kind of things, yes, we save water, but the biggest water saving is in stopping eating animal food, dead animals, things with eyes, listeners. There's so much water that goes into raising one of these sentient beings, may I say, with souls, may I also say, in my opinion, and then killing them for our oral wants.
Wow. I mean, just...
Oral wants? Is that how you use that one? Oral wants? Oral sensations? Stomachry?
I think you're right.
Yeah. You get my point.
Yeah, it's all good.
That's clear, and I think that with a balance of salination, with a balance of this and that, solar energy, wind energy, thermal energy, geothermal, I think there's a way out of this.
Yeah, it's fair to say we just need the balance.
Diversity.
And there needs to be a balance. There needs to be an understanding that this is obviously producing a lot of harmful. Actually looking at the costs. Looking at the issues around certain fields, around certain energy sources, and trying to actually achieve a good balance. And in so many different fields now, this is the case. And now, sorry, I'm just a bit sort of. I think it sort of makes me a bit angry, this question, because it's just there's all this progress, but then it's like,
Well, there's no simple answer. There's no one fixing thing here, for sure.
Of course not. That's the thing.
And again, sorry, Attenborough, who we had on our show. No, we didn't have him on our show. We suggested we'd get him on our show, which we're still trying. He is a very busy man. He does suggest in his latest blockbuster documentary that we got to bring diversity back, and that doesn't just mean in nature. It means also in ideas and things that we use to innovate, because the world is different all over the place. We have different strengths and weaknesses, and we must work with that within that particular local place to find what is the best for that local place. Okay, so let's move on, shall we? I think we've done that one to the depth. So the question number 6. It is the last question. Wipe the tear from your face. How many countries have rules requiring that local communities are included when planning and managing freshwater resources? How many countries have rules requiring, now whether or not they're followed, of course, is another thing, requiring that local communities are included when planning and managing freshwater resources? You can say 30% of countries have rules, 50% of countries, or 70%. I'm going to just go 70 because I know that's what they're going to try and say. There's misconceptions.
I think we've agreed. I think we've said here, and that, as you said, is it followed?
Well, yes. Is it ratified? And that's correct, by the way. It's 70%. We're getting good at this. Let's see how many people are ignorant. 82% got it wrong. Quite something, actually. There's a lot of people that get most of these wrong, isn't there?
But I think a lot of it, though, comes down to just because you sign it, I think a lot of people aren't maybe fully thinking it through. And it's possible that a lot of these people aren't going through the whole survey or something. It's also maybe talking a little bit about it. Obviously who they assess with this could be, might change the whole thing.
Yes, and it says here often the locals know their surroundings best. Yes, I'd go along with that. And that's recognised in most countries. But today, more than 70% of countries have policies or laws requiring that water needs for new industrial projects, roads or construction are planned together and wonderfully with the communities surrounding the sites. However, like many well-meaning rules on the books, the reality can be very different. Often there aren't enough resources to plan or implement solutions to ensure that all people get enough clean water and safe sanitation. So, lots of good stuff fudge-packed in there, Alex, in this episode and the other 5 that we've done on these various important key topics that many of us probably never get to really think deeply about.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the end of clean water and sanitation. I've enjoyed this. I've definitely seen how kind of more ignorant, I guess, you are, and certainly how a little bit more ignorant I am, and the misconceptions that abound fully in this world. And as we always say, do your own research.
Yes, as I think, as we've even looked more into it, and certainly there is all this fudge packing, or this fudge, that's a bad choice of wording again, isn't it? They've sort of smeared the wording of the question, they've adjusted it with fudge, whatever you want to say. That was bad wording earlier.
But I think the point is, these podcasts have given us areas to catalyse thinking and feelings about certain things that's going around in the world and affects all of us in some big way, small way, medium way. But these are real key issues that even if you haven't thought about them a lot, something will come up in your mind.
Exactly.
And we discuss them.
Yeah. We don't think about these on a day-to-day basis, and I think the fact that we've taken the time to sit and look at these just helps make us more aware of these matters, and hopefully makes others more aware of these matters.
Perfect. Well, I'm being told by the researchers that's it for today, but I do believe they want to do another pod, maybe for the 50th special, with a bit more of these groundbreaking, interesting, deep, thoughtful, world-reaching questions on these many different topics that affect us all, or certainly will affect us, certainly more importantly as we move forward, where the hell our world is going at the moment. There seems to be crises everywhere, left, right and centre, wherever you are. It's all affecting us. And so, yes, I think we'll get back to this another time. So for now, thank you, Mr. Torin Alex Eldridge Toll from the Torin Eldridge Toll Tang Dam Bam Bam. And yes, we will see you soon, listeners. As always, this is China Jedi.
If you're an English-speaking teacher from anywhere in the world and you have a bachelor's degree but need an official and accredited teaching license to get a job, get a visa to teach abroad, or most importantly to learn all those things you wish you knew before you stood in front of 30-plus students, then reach now to Teach Now and secure a professional US District of Columbia license in as little as 9 months. Online in no time, low cost, high quality. Teach Now. Get in the game. Immediately receive a $100 discount off your tuition by signing up to the Teach Now program via the link www.teach-now.edu/China Jedi.
May the smile be with you.